It's serious, and it's something that has to be addressed, and has to be addressed early.
It always amazes me the amount of violence that's around us in our area, and it amazes me that people can hurt each other the way they do.
The children in the situation. There's so many services that help the mother or the father or the girlfriend or the boyfriend, but the children are kind of just left to the wayside to miraculously heal on their own, and it doesn't happen like that.
I was never physically abused, but my mother was. So we saw all this as growing up as children, we were helpless.
But because I wasn't able to deal with those emotions and the things that happened when I was a child, I feel like it led me into a situation of domestic violence. Because how do you know what domestic violence is when you're living in it all day, every day as a child?
She never really said, I'm being abused. And I can't, now that I know, people will never just say that. And you know, she always, when she stuck up for any woman indirectly. She wouldn't come out and say, but she would listen. And I think that was sad. Just listening is important.
So as soon as we can get to these kids and give them help, then the better off they're going to be. And hopefully you'll break the cycle that they won't be an abuser as well, because quite often that happens.
I didn't have anybody to talk to about it at that time. I didn't want to talk to my mom because I didn't want to upset her. I didn't want to talk to my dad because I figured if I said anything, then he'd be mad at my mom. So I kept it in.
My father was a victim of an abusive situation. His father, and he used to tell me, he used to be so mad at his father that his father abused his mother. And I'm thinking, you did the same thing. You're doing the same thing. How can you not see that?
When you've experienced domestic violence and you're coming for help, or you're talking to someone about help, the last thing a person wants to hear is that it's your fault. Because in your mind, you're already feeling like it's your fault.
Once you make the initial step of calling us or coming in, you're okay. I know it's difficult to make that first step because you don't know, should I do this? What are the ramifications of me doing this to myself, my children, my spouse, the abuser, whoever it is? Well, the ramifications for you are going to be positive.
Everybody has to say enough is enough. And I've stood up 2 years ago when I walked out of court and said that I wasn't taking domestic violence in my house anymore. Enough is enough.
And you wonder, how do they cope? How can you go through this day after day after day?
I would come out of the house in the morning taking my kids to school, and he would have notes taped to my door. He would send me notes in the mail that he spent time typing up, you know, about how I was a horrible mom, and, you know, if I ever came to his side of town, I was gonna die.
What finally was the straw that broke your back, that brought you to us, that finally made you realize that there's help, you know, I can't do this anymore?
Some of the literature that I learned with family justice of the 9,000 plus cases of abuse in 2009, and I just kept thinking about Angie with those numbers, and it said 1 in every 7 cases I reported. That's a lot of numbers. For only one person to report out of 7, that's a lot of numbers. And inside, I was just saying, wow, maybe had she said something or had we called, it could have been 1 in 6.
The struggle that these folks go through on a psychological basis, you know, their self-esteem is just destroyed, in addition to being physically harmed.
In front of the library, in front of my kids, he commenced to beating the pulp out of me.
I didn't realize then, but I realize now how little lies came out to cover up things that were going on. She had a little busted lip, and I believe she had told me something about the dog. You know, like the dog had jumped on her and made her bust her lip, but it wasn't. It was, you know, he had hit her in her lip or whatever. And her thing was, as long as you can't see it, you know, like she was almost trained. It was as long as you can't see it.
I'm doing things that I'm able to do. I'm a part of something that's greater than me. And I would beg anybody that's listening to this to be a part of that too.
It's an awful thing, but I'm glad we're there to help them because years ago this wasn't available to them.
We're here for everybody. Like, that's the first thing that spoke to me when I looked at the murals. This help here is for everyone. That's what my job is to show people that they can survive crisis situations. You can be okay, but you've got to believe that. Coming from somebody who has suffered from domestic violence, who sees women and children in shelters in Buffalo because of domestic violence situations, coming from somebody who sees across all economic backgrounds, domestic violence is real here in Buffalo, please don't let this go under the radar.
When I went on that tour, it was just like, you guys had all the avenues covered, and it was like, this room is for this, and this room is for this.
You could tell your story one time, and that's it. You can sit in one room, and you can have all the agencies come to you. You don't have to go anywhere.
And people had to suffer through situations that they don't have to suffer through any longer because the FJC is available to them.
It's not a day that don't go by that I don't think about her. Her spirit is so positive that it's a definite loss for anybody who knew her. A definite loss. I have to do something for the Justice Center. I have to be involved because I know that's what she wanted.
I'm doing things that my mother, that my father, that people said I would have never done. And it's liberating to me. Liberating is the only word that I can think of. I feel like I have wings and they're not being clipped.